Mr. Pop, welcome, and I'm super happy to have you. Because I know you, and because I know you're a super interesting man, but also because the subjects that we are going to bring are super interesting. And the first one we were talking before is I would like you to take us traveling. And I haven't been traveling for a long time, and the other day I was thinking I miss it. And I don't know, I was thinking of this interview, and you have been in China. How long do you live there?
Oof. So I first went to China in 1999, and I was 19. And I went for a gap year. So I finished my studies, finished school, and was very passionate about martial arts, um, and China being the birthplace of Kung Fu. Yeah, I looked at Japan as well, but I settled with China. I don't know, just something felt right about China. And I went there for a gap year and stayed in a town called Wuishan, which was in the middle of the mountains in Fujian province, kind of southernish China on the coast. And it was absolutely just magical, just everything I wanted um, from that from that experience. And I went back. I had a kung fu teacher then, and we were. He was in. I met him in Wuishan through another English guy who was there training, and he introduced me to him. Jason Lee was his name. That was his English name, and he was young, and he had trained at the Shaolin Temple. I was very talented and very enthusiastic about teaching and about kung fu, and I just immediately had a connection with him. Trained with him in Wuishan for several months, and then he invited me to his home on an island called Dongsang Island, and this place was super remote. I think there had been one foreigner on the island before many years ago. And so when I arrived, everybody was just I got into the village and I was like a celebrity or something, you know. And I stayed there, for a couple of months, and it was just eat, sleep, kung fu every day. We trained all day long, um, and it was amazing. And that's when I think I really got serious about kung fu, was that first visit to China. Then I came back and I worked for a year to earn some money, and then I went back to do it seriously in 2001. It was September of 2001, and I remember that because it was 9/11. It happened, and I started my studies in that September of that year, and that's when 9/11 happened. So it's quite clear in my memory. And I chose to train at the Beijing Sports University to do a degree in Chinese martial arts. I first went to Shaolin Temple because that's the most famous place and everyone knows that. But I found that Shaolin Temple was like they were overtraining a little bit, like waking up at 4:30 in the morning, running up a mountain. The food was not good, and it was just like being in the army or something. They'd have these around the temple itself were dozens of schools that were huge with thousands of students all in lines, like doing kung fu. The whole town, it was like Disneyland for martial arts. Like it's in Hunan province, and very rare. Like no one can really train in the temple. There are a few foreigners that have actually trained in the temple, but around the temple, the whole town is full of schools, dozens of schools, and it's a big business in China. And it's also in China. There's a tradition, especially amongst um, I would say more like working class families or like farmers and stuff, that they would send their sons to Shaolin for a couple of years to like become men, to get tough or something. So I didn't find the training to be very scientific in that sense. So then I went to the Beijing Sports University where all the athletes were training, and yeah, I found that the training was a bit more intelligent there. So that's where I decided to stay, and I did a 2 year it was like diploma in traditional Chinese martial arts, which included like all the traditional weapons and everything. There were like about 20 of us, foreigners there, 20, 30, something like that. And we were like, I mean, this is 2001, you know, so China was just really opening its doors at that time, and, to the Western world. And it was amazing. It was just amazing to be in China at that time. And it's such a magnificent country from its culture, its history, its landscapes, and everything. It was an amazing, magical time. And I'm so happy that that's the decision I made, that I chose China instead of Japan or some other Asian country, I think because of its deep history and because of the changes that it has gone through in the last few decades. And yeah.
This second time you stayed for 3 years?
Yeah, I did 2 years at the university, and then I stayed. I started to work there. I started to do little bit parts in movies and stuff. So directors would occasionally come to our university to look for foreigners that could do martial arts, to basically play like the bad guys in their movies, right? So that, yeah, because like we're the villains, and in their films, the Westerners. So that's kind of how it started, but it didn't really get serious until a bit later on. Like I did my first movie with Jackie Chan, that was in 2010. So up to that point, I was still training. I trained at the university, then I trained with other teachers, and I traveled around China, went to different places to learn, from different masters and stuff, and was dabbling in movies. But until I actually really started to make a career of it, it was after my first Jackie Chan film, Chinese Zodiac.
This is roughly a decade during
this. Yeah, roughly a decade.
So you were living in China during this time?
Yeah,
more or less.
More or less. I came back to Europe now and then, but I would do long stints. You know, I would do stints of 2-3 years in China and then come back here.
And looking back, do you think you found that that spirit of martial arts that you were looking for? I suppose it's very different the way we approach martial arts from the West and the East, and that's why you went there.
Yeah.
To drink from the source. Do you feel like you got close to it? Because you chose kind of like a sports approach to the...
Yeah, more of a sports approach. It was a...
Did that disappoint you in the moment where you hoping for Master Sifu?
Yeah.
In the...
Well, I had...
Treetop?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there are so many myths. I had an experience in China which never happened again. So there was part of me that was looking for the magic, you know, and it was not at the university, because it was more of a sports approach and everything, and it was and that's great. And there is a certain physical part of martial arts which is super important: flexibility, balance, you know, the acrobatic movements, all of that stuff. But I was also interested in, like, you know, the chi, right? Chi power. So this was when I was in Wuishan. So this was before university. It was in that first year that I went to China in 1999. And I was training with Jason, and there were these monks that came to Wuishan. Wuishan's a village, in the middle of the mountains. It's super remote. These monks that were walking through the town one day, and they were dressed literally in rags, with like no shoes and just in rags. And they were handing out these flyers, and I still have the flyer at home. I kept it this whole time, 20 plus years. written in Chinese. And it was for a martial arts demonstration. And Jason said, this should be interesting. These are monks from, like, I don't know, some remote region in the west of China near Tibet or something. And we went to watch this performance, and it was in this tiny little theater with all, like, loads of Chinese people crammed in there. And you didn't have to pay anything, but you had to offer something. And I remember they had this big, like, bag, uh, and people were throwing money into it. And I threw in there like 10 RMB, which is like not even a euro. And Jason snatched it back out of the bag and he said, "That's way too much." And then he threw in just like a few cents or something. And then when we got into the theater, the performance started, and it started with the younger monks, and they were doing like some weapons displays and acrobatics. It's nothing unusual, things I'd seen before. And then one guy came up on stage with a spear, and it was like a steel rod with a sharp point on the end of it, and he put it on his throat, and then he was like pushing. He put it against a piece of, like, a plank of wood, and then he had someone from the audience stand behind it, and he just pushed them over, and then he got 3 people, 4 people, and then there were like 6 people, and then he couldn't push them over, and the rod bent, against his throat. And I was like, okay, I've seen versions of that before, but that was fairly impressive. Like, I've seen it done with wood where they'll split the wood, but with steel, I was like, okay. And then a guy broke up a light bulb, smashed the glass of a light bulb and just ate it, which was kind of bizarre, but he like just ate the glass. And then one guy filled up a metal bowl with water, and put his hand under the water to the bottom of the bottle and just lifted the bowl just with his palm, like it was magnetized or something. And it was getting more and more bizarre until a couple of the older monks came on. The first of the older monks, like the masters, whatever, he had newspaper, and he just took a newspaper in front of us and just tore it into strips like this, stuffed it into his hand, and then he just held it, and then smoke came out of his hand and it was on fire. And then the last monk came on, and he put a bottle on the edge of a table, and it was like one of those Coke bottles that you don't see anymore, and he smashed it without touching it. And what was crazy is when he did it, like, he didn't make a sound, but there was a vibration that ran like through the audience, that came out of his body, like emanated from his body, and went through the audience like that. And everyone just went quiet at that point. And I remember one woman in the back just started crying, and it was really fucking weird. Like, and he looked like straight at me. Like, I still remember this so clearly. He just looked straight at me, like into my eyes, and no one clapped after that. After the other poems, like, people just got really spooked, and it was really surreal. And it was the guy was right in front of me, and I can't figure out like how it would have done. And like, okay, I don't know, something in the bottle made it explode or whatever, but the shockwave that went through everyone felt it. And
did you ever meet him again?
no, never saw anything like that again in China. That was the only time in 20 years. I had other instructors that could do impressive things, like smash bricks or ice or things with their hands, but not move or smash objects without physical contact. That was the only time. And I don't know where they went or where they came from or anything. They just disappeared. Yeah.
Is it only training involved?
After that, I got more interested in Qigong. So Qigong is like Chinese yoga, you might say. They have these very simple postures, which you like standing, where you just stand with your arms like this. They call it hugging the tree. And that's the most basic one. And this, when you hold this posture, I started to do it, and it was so painful and so uncomfortable because you just stand without moving. My teacher had me do it, and you try to do it for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and your mind just starts to go completely crazy. Like, what am I doing? This is such a waste of time. Like, this is so uncomfortable. My back hurts, my shoulders hurt, my neck hurts. But you get through that, and it's most people give up. 90% of people just give up. But once you get through that, then you can go for like 30, 40 an hour, 2 hours, just without moving. And you get, it's weird. It's like a heat starts to just build in your belly and starts to just flush through your body, like in waves, like going through. I don't know if it's what they call like Kundalini, but I definitely had like a lot of that happening when I was in my early 20s, just from these standing posture. And I was doing meditation as well, many different forms of meditation. And at the university, we would do hours of it in the afternoon, just sitting in parks and stuff, meditating, and sometimes 4, 5, 6 hours a day. Was also lucid dreaming, so I started to practice that. Had one teacher who would just, he was living in the mountains outside of Beijing, and no one actually knew where he lived. He would appear every so often, and he was teaching us lucid dreaming, and that was fascinating. That was fascinating. That started a whole kind of chapter of my life. From, I would say, it started when I was at the university, and then for the next kind of 10 years or so, through my mid-20s up to my later 20s, was doing, qigong, breath work. I was introduced to holotrophic breathing as well. That was here in Europe. I did a workshop here in Portugal, actually, and it was with a guy called Gerd Lang from the In-Breath Institute in Germany. He was German, and I did a workshop with him, and that was very impressive. So it was a combination of different things. It was the martial arts, it was the breath work, the qigong. I felt like there was a point where I was just very, very open and hypersensitive to energies and people around me. And I found it very difficult to live in the city. And I was just then drawn more to remote places.
But with all this,
Yeah.
was your intention to become like an incredible fighter? You were more curious about the meaning of life. You were curious about the magical thing of life.
It was a spiritual kind of journey for me.
So
Yeah,
then that's probably what moved you out of the city, yeah, to look for something.
right. I found it difficult to be in places where there were a lot of people. So then I felt like there was definitely a point where I was like, I have to just go somewhere completely remote now in order to progress with this. And
when you did those moves, did you change master? Is there a rank method that you have to follow? Do you have a chain of command or respect?
Not really. It was very personal, very individual. Like I had a few other friends who were very seriously practicing as well, but we all were. It's once it starts to go into like chi energy and spirituality and stuff like that, it becomes very, very individual, and it becomes increasingly more difficult to find a guide. I was having a lot of out of body experiences, and I was learning how to do that through, like, intentionally, right? So
was this during the lucid dreaming?
Yeah, so it was this lucid dreaming and out of body experiences or astral projection. They're kind of terms for the same phenomena. It's basically if you can fall asleep, put your body to sleep while stopping your mind from wandering into dream state, then you have this type of experience. And there was a point where I got very good at it. Like I could just, from being fully awake, like right now, just like close my eyes and lie back and count to 10 and just leave my body.
When you leave your body, can you see?
Yeah, you can see, yeah, you can see yourself. You, there are different kind of zones, I would say, or like planes. So there is the, what I would call the real time zone. So if you leave your body and you're in this, the physical space that your physical body's inhabiting, there might be some small changes to it, but roughly it's very much recognizable.
But would you be able to go around the corner and see what is behind that wall?
Yeah, and so that type of thing, I had a couple of, like, that's difficult to do. Like to, it seems to be that you're in a separate dimension that has some correlation with the so-called physical world. But what I had experiences where I had like shared dreams. And I had one experience where I went to somebody's house. I had a friend who had a home in another country that I'd never been to. It was a country that I'd never been to. And they said, well, go to my house and go to my bedroom and tell me what color the wallpaper is and tell me where the bed is and the furniture and all of that. And I did that and I got it correct. That happened once. Also, I had a shared dream with my sister. So I was in China and she was in England, and we both had this very vivid dream of being at my grandparents' house in England. And I emailed her the next day, and then she said, yes, I had the same dream. And then I recounted exactly what happened in that dream, and it was the same. So we shared with that dream. So I've had these so-called paranormal experiences with it, but to recreate them consistently, I think that takes a whole nother level of practice.
Maybe when you leave your body, you go to a different plane.
Yeah, I think you go to a different plane. I think you can still see this plane like kind of dimly, and there's but you're in like some kind of a spirit realm or astral realm of some kind. And I spent a lot of time exploring that place, a lot of time, years, and testing it. And I found that you have all of your five senses there. So you have taste, touch, smell. It's in color. You also have memory. So you can go to places in the astral plane, which is, as far as I understand, we all go there at night when we dream. And you can go back to places that you remember that you've been before. And there's this really strong nostalgic feeling that you get when you're there. And I can remember a timeline. It's almost of dreams going back to my childhood. It's almost like it's like a second life that you have whilst you're asleep when your spirit leaves your body. And it has a history. It has a timeline, and it has places that you've been, people that you've met. But it's for most of us, our attention is so focused here in this plane of existence that to shift it to other planes of existence takes an enormous amount of effort and practice. But it is possible, and I did that. I was doing that.
Is there a purpose to that? Is besides joy of
Just
spirit?
Knowledge, I think. Yeah.
So it would be like
spiritual knowledge.
Like you have the weekend life, but then almost like you keep a record of your nightlife.
Of your nightlife, yeah. So I believe that the spirit or soul, whatever you want to call it, it leaves the body every night and returns in the morning, and it goes through this process where it finds rest and integration of the experiences that it has here in the daily life. in order to integrate those experiences into itself, it has to go back to its own plane. This physical world of flesh and blood is not its home. It's having experiences here through this vehicle, through this vessel of the human body, but it's not its home, and it has to return to its home every night in order to integrate the experiences and lessons that it's learning here in this very visceral place, you know, of pain and suffering and disease and you know, death and all of those things that we have that we have here, which are a gift really, because it's very, like I said, very tangible, very visceral. Whereas the plane of the soul, there's no suffering, there's no death, there's no pain. So for most people, this nightly integration process of the soul freeing itself from the physical body is an unconscious process. We catch glimpses of it when we wake in the morning, which is what we call dreams. But this process can be more of a conscious process if you want it to be, which is the practice of lucid dreaming. And that's the beginning of it. That's the lucid dreaming is just a gateway into a much wider realm, you know. And
That's that you said knowledge in the awakened state, like, is it useful? I guess it's like how is the integration on this side later on?
But it's when you say useful, you know, it's like a lot of people always ask me that when I talk about out of body experiences. The first thing they say is, you know, can you, you know, go, I don't know, into a secret, like a bank vault or something, and read a code or whatever. And it's like,
let me refine my question. The way you describe it, the one thing that I can relate, besides one or two experiences in meditation or dreams, would be like a psychedelic experience, a little.
Yeah.
And after you have one or two, or three or five or 10, it comes to a point that sometimes I question if I learn something beyond the experience. The first couple of times is amazing.
Yes.
But in the long run, sometimes it feels like the experience can still be healing in the moment and important and meaningful.
Right.
But I'm not sure if you take something back or if one of those experiences gives you enough information to integrate things for like 5 years. So more than useful is in which way you integrate.
I think
this kind of technique.
Right. So I am an avid documenter of my experiences. So I write them down. I have many diaries of the lucid dreams that I've had, like stacks of them, when I started doing it, and also how my life was at that time, like how everything was kind of going.
Do you go through it?
Yes, I go through it, and it's even just by the way that I write, I can see the change in my character. So it's, I can see, I was in my early 20s when I started with my spiritual practice, I was just so excitable, you know, it was just like, I was like mind blowing everything. And then I could see this point where I started to calm down, you know, and then there's this point where I think in my early 20s with my spiritual path, it was always like I wanted to escape the physical world, as in the physical world was boring and mundane and routine and all of that. And then there was this magical place, this astral world or wherever that I was seeking with out of body experiences and things like that. It was a very subtle form of escapism.
The Jedi.
But then what happened is I could see through my writing is that at some point I started to realize that the magic was here. and that there was nothing to run away from. And this is when I felt like, no, I need to become more embodied and more rooted in my physical body, because I am only going to be here for, 80 years, 90, 100 years if I'm lucky, in this form. And then after that, who knows where I'm going to be, or who I'm going to be, or I'm going to take on new bodies, countless new bodies in other places. So pay attention to this and don't run away from it. And just, it was, my thinking changed. It changed, I would say, in the last, I don't know, decade or so. In my 20s, it was always about trying to seek higher states of consciousness, other dimensions, things like that. Now it's more about paying attention right now, and being here right now, and how things are affecting me, how I'm reacting to things in my life, and just being super, super present and super comfortable in my body. I think that I was, So I think that this is the spiritual experience. I think that the daily life, the so-called mundane world, is full of magic if you can be open to it. And it's a shift in, it's really a shift in thinking for me, rather than constantly seeking experiences, almost like seeking highs, Um, so I would say, if that's what I've learned, that's a big part of what I've learned. There's nothing to run away from. There is no higher dimension or better place to be than here right now. And I think once this is gone, we're going to miss it. And we're going to be like, well, I wasted my time trying to run away from it when I kind of missed the point, in a sense, something like that. I don't know. Yeah.
Being here.
Yeah, just being here. And it's so difficult for people to do. People are always, in some subtle way, slightly in the future or slightly in the past. They're reminiscing about how, good times in the past, or they're fantasizing about better times in the future, but nobody's really here right now. And that's the only thing that's real. And that's the thing that we're going to miss when we're gone, so.
Yeah. So I think we were living in the city, and you met this teacher that was teaching you the lucid dreaming.
Right.
With him, you went through this period, and then you said you had moved to the countryside.
Yeah, so
the reason I'm bringing you back here is because you said the country in China, and I wanted to hear a little bit how it feels, the countryside of China.
It's amazing. I traveled extensively throughout China. I've seen most of it. And I would say the places I was drawn to, I spent time in Yunnan province, and there was a temple there in a town called Dali, which was beautiful. I visited that, and Dali is like your ideal, like, terracotta roofs by a lake, like little town, like Kung Fu Panda place. Is just so magical. And there was a Kung Fu monastery in the mountains. Like, I don't know, it was like you'd have to get out there on a bus and then walk up a mountain through this beautiful forest, and it was set up there. It was just absolutely idyllic. And you could just be there for as long as you wanted. It was super cheap. Like it would cost almost nothing. Like, you'd eat, sleep, and train there. And the teachers were originally from Shaolin, but they kind of had their own approach to martial arts, which I think had a little bit more of a Taoist influence as well, rather than the traditional, like, Buddhist approach that Shaolin had. And
is there visual or even a first impression difference or a fundamental difference that you can see quick between a Taoist and Buddhist training?
Yeah, Tai Chi uh, and Tai Chi and Bagua, which are internal martial arts. Like Chinese martial arts are divided into external and internal. In reality, all movement is initiated from internal forces, but it's only when you do movements very slowly with full mindfulness that you can start to connect to those very subtle origins of movement, which is basically chi, because your body is animated by chi, right? Without chi, you're a corpse. So, but that the source of yourself, to find the source of that movement, is incredibly subtle. So that's why such styles like slow moving styles like Tai Chi evolved, and they come from Wudang. They're Taoist styles. So Wudang is the other martial arts center in China. You've got Shaolin and you've got Wudang, and Wudang is on the Wudang temple is on the top, like top of a mountain with like thousands of stairs to get up to it. Super famous. Uh, and the Shaolin styles were a bit more explosive, external, hard, physical, like smashing bricks and steel with your hands. And the like Wudang, the Taoist styles were softer, and you should always try to find moving from your center, from your dantian, uh, which is your base chakra, right? Which is a most important one in martial arts because it's the source of your power. So every movement that you do in any style, you should be moving from your dantian. But a lot of martial arts, it requires so much stillness and patience in order to try to locate the source of your movement that most people they're not doing it consciously. They're just doing it in a more kind of unconscious manner. So because to do any movement at all, it requires your chi, like your muscles contract and all of that, but that's secondary to the source of your movement, which is your chi or your prana, right? But you're not consciously aware of that. You feel the muscles contract because the muscles are very physical and gross and tangible. The chi is so subtle, but there are certain exercises you can do. For example, in qigong, if you just hold your hands like this, okay, palm to palm, and eventually you're going to start to, if you just do it for 10 minutes like this, with your fingers very relaxed, you'll start to feel something in your hands, like kind of pushing ever so gently, right? This is your chi and it's there all the time, but you're just not paying attention to it. You're paying more attention to the gross physical movements of the bones and the physical body and the muscles. And that's where the internal martial arts have their focus. That's where they start. So yeah, and there's to find good teachers that have that knowledge is not easy. Yeah.
But that takes you through an exploration of the countryside looking for that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I traveled extensively through China, but like I said, I never found those monks from Wuishan. And I don't know where they came from, don't know where they went, don't even know if they were, I don't know. I don't know if yeah, that was impressive. And that's the only time I ever saw magic like that. That was it. That was the only time. Never saw it again in China.
What you said before is so true, is of this being the reality that we have. Yeah. But at the same time, even if we do it healthy, this desire to get out of your average mind or your average life or your average experience, the healthy version will take you towards Kung Fu or yoga or some sort of self-energy development technique. Yeah. What is the meeting point, do you think? Like, because for you it's like a life calling. Like you go 19 years old to China. You're saying you were called by the magic, so it's not, you were not going there for a career, a little bit of exploring, but the center of your exploration was consciousness, so to speak. Yeah. But then at the same time, we realize through our exploration that being here, being now, being in the flesh, in our body, muscles and skin is where we are supposed to be.
Yes.
But then we have this incredible curiosity to what is beyond, to what is at night, to what is when we die.
Yes.
So we're dancing in that edge. How does the edge dance for you through the years? Because you haven't lost dreams of magic. It's a different stage of your life.
It's a different stage, like having a child and having a family and having to be a little bit more rooted and responsible, you know, and taking care of that kind of daily life. I definitely feel that there is a peak. I peaked in my early 20s in terms of my spiritual practice because it was this very subtle play between being young enough to still have that childlike mind, but old enough to put the discipline in for the practice, because you have to be able to still your thoughts in any of these practices, whether it's lucid dreaming, martial arts, like whatever, yoga, qigong, like there's ultimately you have to be able to still your thoughts, and that takes serious effort and focus to be able to do that. And so there's this kind of sweet spot for me. This is how it was anyway. There was this sweet spot. I would say it was kind of my early to mid 20s where the real responsibilities of life and adulthood hadn't yet kind of hit me, and I was old enough to put in the hours and hours and hours of practice, dedicated, disciplined routine, you know, of the practice and I had this experience when I was 25 in meditation, which I never had again. It felt like it was a one-off experience where I entered into this state of absolute I don't know what it was, but it just felt like I was everything was part of me, that I am forever, I always have been. I was never born, I will never die, and everything is not real, but it's also real. And there's no space or no time, and there's no separation between anything. It's all one thing. And it's just white light, and it's just like love. And in that space, there's no suffering, no boredom, no pain. Yet you are there and you are more fully yourself than you have ever been or ever known. And what was interesting is that in this space, there is a presence of I can only describe it as like a parent. It felt to me like a parent, but the parent in the ultimate meaning of the word. And you're just in its arms, and it's just telling you everything is just fine. You are perfect. You are exactly where you need to be. the world is perfect, everything is fine, and I have, in all the different experiences that I've had with altered states of consciousness, and I've experimented with all the psychedelics. We can talk about that later, but this stood alone as something else entirely. It wasn't the same thing at all. It was like,
Does it make you feel melancholic when you remember?
Sure.
It's mainly I'm thinking you think of peak. I can understand physically, but you said that you peak spiritually.
Yes.
So then you would consider that those who want to continue spiritually, they would become monks and then not have responsibility.
Yeah, it's very difficult to maintain that childlike mind, which is so open. Children, I think, are. It's interesting in India. They have this word. I can't remember the word itself, but it's a specific word for the specific type of enlightenment that children possess, because they don't have it. It's like unrealized. They're in it, and I think there's no question that children are in some state of enlightenment, but it's unrealized. They don't know it. This is all that they know, and they find it bizarre that adults are not in it. I remember this as a child. I'd be like, why do my parents not play? It's so weird. Like, they're just like doing these boring things, like, making dinner and like driving me to school and all this stuff, but I never see them playing. It's like, playing is so fun. Like, why don't adults play? And so when you're a child, you don't realize that you're in a state of consciousness. Like, states of consciousness don't mean anything to you. You don't understand them, or states of mind, states of perception. And it's only when you get older and you realize that you are in a certain state of consciousness, and that state of consciousness can be altered, right? And when it's altered, your whole experience of life and the world around you changes dramatically. So it's, yeah, it's like the teenage years through to the mid-20s for me is like, if you can have a strong meditation or spiritual practice going, like that, those are the years where you can really get to some incredible places. And then after that, the heaviness of that responsibility and society, and unless you go to a monastery or go and live in a cave or something and just be like, well, don't want to have kids, don't want to have a job, don't want to and just purely focus on my spiritual practice. It's a difficult thing, and I don't really agree on that either. Like, I felt there was a point in my kind of mid to later 20s where I was like, well, I was very seriously contemplating just going to live in a monastery for the rest of my life. And I was like, but at the same time, there's a lot of things that I don't like how the world is, like how things are being run and stuff. And I'm like, look, if I'm just going to go to a monastery, I'm just running away from that. And I kind of, if I want the world to become a better place, or the place that I would prefer it to be, I have to be in society, and I have to be connected to society and the people in it, and contributing in some way, and being present to try to impress my ideas and share my ideas in order to change it. Because I think, the spiritual path is, all of humanity is on the spiritual path, and at some point they will be, even if they're not on it in this lifetime, in the next, or whenever. We all end up on it because we're all spiritual beings. And I think that spiritual ideas and practices are the most important thing that we can be doing individually and as a collective.
That moment of turning from the dream of maybe going to the monastery and becoming a Shaolin temple, a Shaolin monk, and you turn towards life and getting involved and getting a family and whatnot.
Yeah.
Was that the time that you started doing movies?
Yeah, I started to get. I had I had a family, and I started to work in films, and I started to want to express my ideas. Uh, Film always fascinated me, and the magic of the movies and all martial art films and stuff, and writing as well. Like I like to write, and I just feel like running away to a monastery is, I don't know, like maybe in another lifetime. Maybe I did that already in a previous lifetime. I feel like I probably have been a monk for many lives. I'm not saying that it's not correct. It just wasn't correct for me at that time. I get the feeling though, when I'm older, maybe in my 60s, I think then I might take a bit of time, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, 60s and 70s, to go to a monastery and go back deeply into my spiritual practice. But right now, I'm very much involved with the everyday world and society, and I'm happy about it, So,
Your creativity expressed through the movies, the writing, which I'm less familiar. I know you write, but I don't know the details. Uh, Teaching as well be part of your
yes,
creativity, no?
definitely.
Because you're condensing all that you have learned into
Yeah.
some type of training method that is very yours.
Yes, very much so. Like, I started teaching, it was the beginning of COVID, so 4 or 5 years now. And I had, I've taught people, like given people tips and stuff, and on film sets as well, actors, and on working on stunt teams and everything, learning from each other, teaching each other. And there's always been that part of me, but actually having a formal place, opening a dojo and teaching formally. No, that this is, I started, in 2021, end of 2021, I think it was, here in Portugal. And it's been just, I love it. It's the most amazing thing. And I teach, it's a mixture of different fighting styles. It's predominantly striking based, um, but it's a mixture of maybe kickboxing, taekwondo, and kung fu, uh, with some kind of a bit of influence from jeet kune do, which was Bruce Lee's system. Bruce Lee was the first person to really start mixing martial arts, mixing styles, in order to find like the most effective way to fight, but fighting for the street fighting, right? So in jeet kune do, you can eye poke and kicks to the groin and break the kneecaps and things. All these things that are illegal in sport martial arts. Jeet kune do eventually evolved into what we would call today mixed martial arts, or MMA, with the help of the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship. There were like different, going back to the 90s. Bruce Lee was, he did all of his work before he died, right? In the 60s and 70s with mixing the martial arts. Then we had this period, the 80s and 90s, of different competitions in Japan. They had like shuto, or shoot fighting, where there was like a mixture of styles. But eventually it was the UFC, Ultimate Fighting Championship, that really kind of tested what works and what doesn't work with a very limited rule set. I think the early days of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, it was just no eye pokes, no groin shots, and I think no biting. Everything else was allowed. And there were no rounds. So it was like, you just fight until there's a winner. And some fights could go on for like an hour or longer. It's crazy. And then it got more formalized with rounds and more rules to make it less bloodthirsty, for a wider audience, because it's a big business now. The UFC is the biggest. I think it's bigger even than boxing. I mean, it's the biggest fight competition in the world. And it's kind of gone through this evolution to show like what is the most effective way to fight, but it still has rules. It has a lot of rules, so it's not really street fighting, and it's not really the essence of what Bruce Lee was looking for in Jeet Kune Do, which is the raw violence and brutality of a street fight where there's no rules. And that fascinates me. That really fascinates me. And how to beat an opponent. And fights happen on the street. They happen very fast. There's no rounds. There's no timeout. There's no referee to say, oh, you can't do that.
So the fascination is which technique would get this done?
Yeah. And
because you don't get in fights.
No. Oh, I've been in fights, sure.
No, but I'm saying the fascination from the standpoint of a teacher or a martial artist is, if there were no rules,
if there was no rules,
how do I
beat
to a stop?
Yeah, how do I beat my opponent? And
is it so that in that particular question, the jiu-jitsu fighters have an advantage over everybody else?
Jiu-jitsu.
A good jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, jiu-jitsu is grappling. So
once they get you there, it's really difficult, right?
Sure. So martial arts fall into two general families, which is striking and grappling. And striking, punching and kicking, anything involving striking your target, grappling's grabbing hold of, your opponent. Some form of wrestling, and there are like so many styles in each of these two big general families, and mixed martial arts in its modern incarnation is mixing grappling and striking. And so fights always start, whether they're in the street generally and in the ring or cage, they always start standing up with distance between your opponent. So this favors the striker. So the fighting happens at different ranges. Like you have to close the space. Someone who's only trained in jiu-jitsu and is not trained in striking has to close the space between their opponent to get their hands on them and get them to the floor, preferably, because jiu-jitsu is predominantly ground fighting, choking, joint breaking, submissions on the ground.
So the challenge there would be to get close enough
to take your opponent to the floor, to then be able to put them in some kind of a chokehold or joint lock.
And there is where the problem would begin for the striker, because
the striker has to keep the grappler away from them and has to knock them out. Or cause a concussion of some kind, or serious damage to put that person down, incapacitate them before they get their hands on them. So any good martial artist who wants to really understand fighting and how fighting works needs to know both. Like you have to do a blend of both, which is why...
Has it arrived the moment where someone is good at both at
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, but I would say even at like high levels of competition in mixed martial arts competitions like the UFC, you're either going to be more of a striker or a grappler, and that's just where your talent is. Like there's just a feeling. Some people just have the feeling for striking, and striking is like a game of tag. It's like I'm trying to tag you before you can tag me. And it's all very quick movement and distance, and it's your eyes. It's like, and very fast reflexes. Grappling is more like body weight and leverage, and so.
Before you said something, sorry to interrupt you, about the beginning of movement.
Yeah.
Now, when you were doing this, that must put you very connected to that beginning of movement, because in the reading of the opponent, there cannot be much thinking, right?
And so you get very good at, when you do a lot of when you do a lot of sparring and you spar with a lot of different partners and you trust those partners, then you get very good at kind of reading the source of their movement and very subtle things, just how their shoulders drop or the way the foot moves. Like you can kind of tell what's coming before it happens. And this just absolutely fascinates me. Like I love to spar, and I love to spar with good partners that can do it in a controlled, respectful way, and that you can really push each other. And I'm predominantly a striker, and I feel like sparring is like a dance where you're connected to your partner, and when you go in, you can go into these. For me, it's like you've got to be so relaxed to start to see all of this stuff, like to start to read somebody. And the more tense you are, and the more you try to like beat them or you try to win, the worse you perform. It's a very weird thing. Like you have to, of course, the goal is to hit your opponent and not get hit back. But if you obsess over that too tightly, try to hold on to that goal too tightly, you lose your looseness. And so it's like, I think there's a point where this is something I always try to bring my students to, is that there's a whole load of techniques that you have to learn as a beginner. But ultimately, all you're doing is just trying to access this like flow state where you stay completely relaxed, where you're just solely in the moment and you're not trying to win. As soon as you try to win, you block the flow state. And when you're in the flow state, it's an amazing feeling. And for me, sparring is my meditation practice now. It's almost like your opponent moves just ever so slightly in slow motion. And or another way to put it is, like how a puppet has strings on it, right? And you pull this string and the puppet hands go up, and you pull this string and the other hand goes up. When I'm in that flow state and I feel very connected to my opponent, it's almost like I can cast strings onto them, and I know if I pull this string, they're gonna move like this, or they're gonna move like that. And you do it just by, like feinting. Like I do this, and I was like, okay, I can start. They're playing my game. They're playing to my movement, not me reacting to their movement. That's when I know I can beat them, And that's not really about technique.
So it's a matter of guiding the fight. Like you
Yes,
the one leading.
Like
exactly. If this was a tango dance,
exactly.
Instead of being the led one, you would
become the one leading. And this is what it's all about. This is how you win. This is how you beat an opponent, is that you've got to start to get them to respond to you.
Would you let someone believe that you are leading, that they are leading, but that would be a trap? That's also a second layer to it.
Exactly. So fighting happens in layers, and it's predominantly it's 3 layers. So as a beginner, you are very much focused on the first layer, which is just attack and defense, right? Like you need to be able to throw your attacks. It's just like a game of tag, right? I need to throw my fists and my feet to target areas on your body with control and precision and with perfect timing. I need to understand the fundamentals, which is distance, position, and timing. Okay, and then when you're throwing your attacks at me, I need to be able to block or avoid those attacks without thinking. Okay, in the beginning, it takes a lot of practice of, okay, you need to like put your hands here, you need to move your head this way, when they throw a punch, when they throw a kick. And it takes a lot of repetition, and you have to do all of these movements consciously to learn them, just like learning anything. You have to do it consciously first until it becomes intuitive, until it becomes digested by your subconscious. And then you just do it by reflex. That has to happen. And that can take months. Usually to get a beginner to their first layer, which is just attack, defense, distance, position, is all kind of intuitive and they don't have to think about it. If they're coming to me regularly, it's like maybe 6 months.
So it's like learning your vocabulary and your syntaxes before you become a writer. Yeah.
Sure. It's like your basics, your foundation. But That's not how fighting works. Fighting works in a much more intelligent way, which is why we talk about fight IQ, right? When people talk about fight IQ, what does this mean? So the second layer of striking is basically we're playing this game of tag. I'm trying to touch you and you're trying to touch me. I'm trying to avoid your touches and you're trying to avoid my touches. That's it. These touches happen to be fists and feet that can knock you out. Okay. So it's a pretty serious game of tag. Now, the second layer is basically I pretend to tag you here, but actually I'm going to change direction and tag you here. Okay. That's called faking. Or I feint. So a feint is I go to tag and then I actually tag you. You react from the first movement, but there's nothing coming. Something opens. Oh, I touch you. Okay, that's called feinting, which is why you can see it in any fight sport, whether you're watching boxing, kickboxing, mixed martial arts. You'll see the first couple of rounds of the fight between two new fighters that have never fought each other. No one's actually hitting each other. They're just kind of doing this. They're feinting. And they're pretending to strike just to read what their opponent does. Does he bring up his hands? Does he try to catch the punch? Does he move his head? And you build up a catalog of reactions from your opponent before you commit. Because once you commit, you have to cross the space between you, which is what we call the pocket or the void, which is the danger zone. So you were always just going to hover on the edge of that danger zone where you can't touch me and I can't touch you. Okay. But at some point, one of us is going to have the courage to jump across that space to try to tag the other person. But you're vulnerable in that moment and you're vulnerable to counter attacks. So if I try to hit you in that moment, I have to cross the space, which means I'm close enough to be hit back. So a counter is when somebody's throwing at you, instead of just defending or avoiding that shot, you move and you touch them back in the same moment. Okay, so the second layer is faking. So that's firstly pretending to go somewhere to actually go somewhere else, or waiting for your opponent to move first. And as they attack you, you tag them in the moment they're attacking you. That's counterattacking. The third layer is like what you said, pretending to make a mistake, giving your opponent like a reaction that they're looking for. So I see somebody keeps throwing this attack because they're looking for a particular opening. And I know that. So I let them have it on purpose. And when they go for it, I knew the whole time what's coming. And that's called baiting or trapping. So you lure your opponent into a false sense of confidence by purposefully making a mistake, knowing that they're going to capitalize on that mistake. And when they do, you're ready for them. So it's like a game of chess, right? It's like a very...
But in a game of chess, no one is beating the shit out of you. So what do you do with the fear? So the only thing I have to relate to that is similar to this is football.
Sure, yeah.
And it's super physical and it can get rough, but we're not hitting each other.
Yeah.
We have some middle object that we pour our frustration onto.
Yeah, the football. Yeah.
And sure, it can be really intense and we can kick each other. It happens. But this is constant and against you, yeah?
Yeah. But that's for me, that is the...
Is the fear only prior to the battle? Or is during the fight as well, you're in fear? Or
Sure. But well, for example, when I started martial arts, right? And I remember that, like, I started in kickboxing and we were doing quite a lot of sparring. And I remember the first time I got hit in the face. I remember it clear as day. I was like maybe 12 or 13 years old. First time someone really punched me in the face, with gloves, of course. And that...
So you got punched in the face first in training, not in the streets.
Yeah. Yeah. And, with gloves on, but you still really feel it, and almost getting like a bit of a concussion. And I was just a kid, and just the reaction, like the emotional reaction, is immediately you want to punch them back, right? And it's like you almost do it without thinking. And
how long until your system realizes, oh no, he's stronger, and then you go into a ball and please don't hit me? How long until you turn into a victim? Sure.
Or, everyone reacts differently. Mm-hmm. Everyone reacts differently. Some people hit back, some people don't, So, but you've got to get past that. You've got to get to this point where somebody hits you and you just feel nothing. Like you are just calm as anything. So there has to be no emotional there has to be like no emotions when you're fighting. Like any kind of emotions, whether it's fear or anger, they just get in the way.
Did you manage to maintain this, like let's say in competition?
So the first time, yeah, this is interesting actually. So sparring is not fighting, because when you spar with somebody, you're not trying to hurt them, you're just practicing. So sparring is basically, to learn how to fight, first you need to learn all the basics, and then you need to do what's called drilling. So drilling is like with a partner, you pick a specific thing that you want to work on. Like maybe it's just your avoiding the jab, right? The jab is the left hand or the lead hand for most people if you're a right-handed fighter. It's your quickest punch. Now, it's a very fast punch, and you need to learn how to see it. You need to learn how to avoid it. So you might just do a drill where I just throw jabs at you and you move your head. Okay, that's just a drill. But we're working together. Like, I'm not really trying to hit you. I'm not going super quick. I'm letting you see the punches, letting you get comfortable. It's a different story when I'm throwing punches and kicks and everything completely randomly, and you're trying to hit me, and I'm being completely unwilling to cooperate with you in any way. That's a totally different story. So eventually, you have to get to the point where you start to spar, and when you spar, I don't know what my partner's going to do next. I don't know if they're going to kick, if they're going to punch, if they're going to try and grab me. I don't know what they're going to do, and they don't know what I'm going to do. So it seems in the beginning extremely chaotic. And that chaos with practice, and if you do enough sparring, structure starts to appear in that chaos. And like I said, it's like throwing the strings onto the puppet, and you can create structure by feinting, faking. Like 90% of the shots that I'm going to throw at you are not intended to hit you. They're just intended to get a reaction out of you so I can read your movements. And also just watching, like, what do you favor? Do you favor your right leg or your left leg? Your right hand or your left hand? So I can start to get a little bit of an idea of what you're going to do next. Just a little bit. Now, sparring and fighting are two very different things. When you fight, you're trying to knock out your opponent, right? So they say that if you in the gym, you are like a 9 out of 10 sparring, right? You're very good at sparring. When you step into your first fight, you're going to be like a 3 because of the fear and the adrenaline. To be able to stay as relaxed as you are in the gym, in a safe place against an opponent that you trust, that's not going to try and hurt you, that's pulling their shots, that is just touching you, not trying to knock you out, to then go into the ring. And they say it takes, on average, maybe 10 fights. 10 fights that are just, we call them like burner fights. Like burner fights, you just burn through them just to get it out of your system, to get the fear out of your system. Those first few fights, you're going to be like a 2 or a 3, and eventually you'll get close to a 7 or an 8. Very few fighters, even at the professional level, are going to be like at the level of where they are when they're just completely relaxed, sparring their partners in the gym, as when they walk into the ring or the cage. There's a lot online. It could be they're in a career, they're fighting for a belt, there's money, maybe they need that money, whatever it might be. There's pressure, there's prestige, they're being watched by thousands of people around the world. It's hard to switch all of that off and enter what I spoke about before, the flow state, because it's the fighter, and I see it every time I watch a fight, or it's the fighter that I see is in the flow state, that he's the one that's most relaxed, most calm, and just got this sense of confidence where he's not grasping, he's not trying to win, he's just in the flow state and he's just letting it happen. That's the guy who's going to win.
It's just practice to deal with the fear. Is it a practice thing, or is it some people that can never get past it?
A bit of both, just like everything in life. It's a bit of both. I think there are people who are just born to do it and have talent, and um, you it does get better. It does get better fight after fight, but yes, there are some people that are just not meant to be in the ring, you know, and that just never get over that fear. And so, yeah, it's a bit of both, like everything.
What kind of martial arts is there in the industry? Did you find good practitioners, good teachers, or is it higher? Is it lower? Because in one way you might think they have the best of the best.
Well,
What was
fighting,
your experience in the movie?
yeah, fights. Martial arts in films is its own discipline. Fight choreography is it's choreographed to start with.
But would you say in levels of skill is as skill?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the precision and the control, and just that awareness, and also selling it for the camera and stuff like that to make it look super realistic, but nobody's getting hit or hurt, is an art form in itself, and it's definitely carried over into the way I teach. I like to have my students be able to throw all of their attacks full speed without touching or barely touching their partner. And this just makes this gives a longevity to their career as a martial artist, because in striking, any striking based the style which practices sparring, head injury is a real thing. So you don't want to be getting hit in the head. Even with a small amount of force, it causes the brain to rattle inside the skull and hit the inside of the skull, which causes micro damage. So I am very particular about that, about control, in sparring. Very particular about it. I would say more than any other school that I've been to, that's a biggie for me. And it has come from the movies. You can't be punching an actor in the face, like that's going to finish your career pretty quickly. And I think that I have a lot of my students are women, and so I think that that's been a big kind of draw for them, because they feel safe, and that nobody's getting hit hard, and you don't need to hit hard. I mean, that's unless you're going into full contact competition. Hitting hard is maybe the last kind of 10% of your training camp to prepare for a fight, just to toughen up a little bit and just to get ready for those hard impacts. But everything else, all the techniques, everything all translates across just by touching. Like fighting all works the same way, whether I'm going like full power or I'm just touching you. If I see an opening and I go for it, I can stop the punch. It makes no sense to just hit you hard. It's stupid. And I'm not a fan of that. Full contact sparring, it's pointless. It's dangerous. It causes concussions and head injuries. It has its place, but only if you're going to fight as a competitor, and it's only in the last couple of weeks of your training camp. You're not doing that year round. It's stupid. You're going to get brain injury. So in movies, it's a very different style, because you have to telegraph your movements, and whereas when you actually fight, you don't want to telegraph your movements. You want to make everything hidden so your opponent doesn't see it. But that doesn't translate well on the camera. Otherwise, the audience, they can't understand. Like, did he just get hit? Like, I didn't see the punch. Of course, that's what you want in a real fight. But on film, you want everything to be super visual. You want it to be big and beautiful, and so the audience can see it. And there's a storytelling that happens in a fight scene. So a good fight scene has a story to it. It's like, firstly, the hero, he's not going to win straight away. Maybe he's going to be like beaten, and he's going to be an underdog, whatever. Then he has to like fight, and then he fights this person, and then he fights the final boss. And there's like there's a storyline, right? He's got to rescue this person or whatever, and to get the audience invested emotionally into a great fight scene. And that's why there are great martial arts films, and then there's a lot of rubbish ones which are just basically kick punch, but that's not what it's about. It's about telling a story.
Do you choreograph fights as well?
So yeah, I've done choreography, sure.
Do you enjoy it?
Do I enjoy it? Yeah, I would say I'm more interested in real fighting now. I kind of I started off in kickboxing and doing all of that, and which was, some competition and stuff like that. Then I got into movies, which is it's all fake, it's all choreographed. I mean, it's a beautiful art form and it's wonderful to watch, but it's not how fighting actually works. It's very much a fantasized version of what fighting is. And now I feel, as I kind of started teaching and I'm getting a bit older, I'm going back to my roots again of like, what is the real essence of a fight? How to beat an opponent who, yeah, it's always fascinated me because I've always kind of been a little bit of an underdog my whole life. Like I was always like the smallest, kind of skinniest kid in class, like, and was never really good at sports or anything like that. And I had to deal with, like, I dealt with bullies and stuff at school. And what really fascinates me in martial arts is how a smaller, weaker person how can they be a bigger, physically stronger person just through technique? That fascinates me. And I think that's, yeah, through skill, not just through brute force.
And the skill probably extends to the mental disposition, yeah? We're talking about dealing with fear and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Like a good master. Like the sentence that you would hear in your head is that he has won the fight before the fight has started.
Exactly.
Just by his presence. Maybe even the fight didn't need to happen.
And I deplore violence. I think violence is a horrible thing. But for me, martial arts is not violent. I don't know. Like there's a point where I think it always has been my spiritual practice. Out of all the different practices that I've done, I think martial arts has been my ultimate spiritual practice. And there is, when you have two great martial artists, high level martial artists, and they fight, and there's a clear winner, there's this respect that comes with it, and humility as well, which is an incredible spiritual lesson of like, wow, he beat me. Respect, and it's a hard truth when you really try your best, and you've put in years and years of practice, and you go up and against an opponent and you get beaten. It's a hard lesson, and it teaches you incredible humility, and you can't really have an ego. So yeah, I think that's why I find it such a spiritual kind of discipline. A lot of misconceptions. There are a lot of misconceptions about martial arts, and people think that it's violent, but it's really not. I think it obviously depends on the teacher. But yeah.
Is Jackie Chan cool?
Oh yeah, he's so cool, man. He's the most, like, he's just the most loving, humble, like respectful. He's really like a father figure to me and to many people. Anyone that's worked with him, they call him Dagur, which means big brother. And he treats everyone on the set the same. Doesn't matter if you're if you're the producer of the film that's financing his film or whatever, or if you're an extra who's there for a day. He treats everyone the same. He's deeply, he is a humanitarian. Yeah, like he really loves humanity. He loves people. And he has had a very hard career and a very difficult like the training that he went through, and because he went to the he was in the Peking Opera School, was very, very hard from the age of, young age. His book, his biography, I think it's called I Am Jackie Chan. The most amazing biography you could ever read on anyone, like just amazing. And to meet him in person, the first film I did with him, Chinese Zodiac, we were cast in China. So I had a friend who went for the audition, and he said, "Come along." And I was like, "Really, a Jackie Chan film? I've got no chance." I went there, got on really well with the fight coordinator. Yeah, sure. And so I think just the combination of my experience and just having, just, I don't know, I just kind of vibed well with the fight coordinator, did the audition well, and they were happy with it. And then next moment, I was on a plane being flown to Paris. So the first scene, they shot scenes in China, they shot scenes in France. I was being flown on a plane over to Paris, and we were staying in this hotel. It was this tiny little hotel in Chinatown. I remember it was so small that you had to, like, walking in the corridor, you had to kind of go like past each other like this. It was tiny, and Jackie Chan had the penthouse, it was just a really small place. And we found out later that he didn't want the paparazzi knowing, the press and stuff, that he was doing these scenes in Paris. It was all kind of a little bit top secret for this film. So he was staying in, like, it was like a friend's place or whatever. Tiny place in Chinatown in Paris is, it's a pretty crazy district, like quite run down, but a lot of character. And we landed, went straight to the hotel, and they were like, "You hungry?" We're like, "Yeah, sure." So we went to this little restaurant in the back of the hotel, and we were sat there with a couple of the stunt guys, a couple from the stunt team, and they're super friendly and everything. And so, like, it's a little restaurant. Somebody was in the kitchen cooking and, like, making loads of noise in there, pots and pans flying around. And we're waiting for our food, and the chef comes out the kitchen, and he chucks down a bowl of noodles on the table and stuff, and it's Jackie Chan, like, in an apron. And, like, he'd just been in there, like, cooking our dinner. And yeah, he came out and he sat with us, and he's like, he'll sit next to you and he'll, like, be chatting with you like this, and he'll be taking food off of his plate and putting it onto your plate. And he's like, "Don't go hungry. Come on, eat up, like, blah, blah, blah." And it was like telling us all these stories from, like, all the movies that we'd seen with him. I didn't sleep for 2 nights. I felt like I was in a dream, and it was just such an amazing experience. We were shooting in this big chateau, and we had these fight scenes and everything. And at one point, we were doing this fight in this barn, and we got all covered in dust. And Jackie Chan just had a Hoover, and he was, like, hoovering us down. He's like, "Turn around," blah 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 blah. And then he's picking up the camera and he's moving this, and he's just like anybody else. This guy's like the most famous Asian celebrity in the world. It's like,
and he did most of his stunts, no?
Nearly all. Yeah.
Because I remember him from.
And he's so fast. Oh my God, I've never fought anyone faster and so precise. And when he hits you, it's like he just touches you. It's so light, the control and the precision. We were doing this scene on another movie, Kung Fu Yoga, and
I think I saw that one. Kung Fu Yoga.
Yeah. So he, as he's gotten older, because he's late 60s, I don't know. Yeah, it's in his late 60s, I think, mid to late 60s. He has a double for some things, all the fights he does himself. Occasionally something, he'll have a double step in for him. I mean, that's understandable. Jesus Christ, the guy's like, he's not young anymore. Anyway, so they were setting up this somersault that he had to do, and it was high. It was the height of this house, at least. It was like a flip, and they were putting a wire onto his double, and setting up the cameras and everything. And the wire just kept getting tangled up. Like, every time they did the rehearsal, he couldn't land the flip properly. And Jackie's like, "There's no time. I can do it without the wire. And I just sort of like, I was looked over and I saw the producer's face and he's just like, no. And Jackie Chan just runs up there, does the flip with no wire, lands it perfect in one take. And I was just like, well, that's why he's Jackie Chan, you know? And it was, I wouldn't do that. From that height, no way. And this guy's, you know, in his 60s, just amazing.
He come in these two schools that you mentioned. Was he a Shaolin or a?
No, he was at the Peking Opera School. So Peking Opera is where they train their performers. So you learn how to do martial arts, you learn how to sing, and you learn how to dance and do theater, right? And they send the children there, and it's crazy. Like if you read his book, it's an amazing book, but like doing a handstand for an hour until you pass out, like just crazy stuff. Like it was a really, really tough discipline, the Peking Opera. But it made him the man he is, you know, like he can do anything. He's the most incredible performer.
This ruthlessness in the, maybe it's not ruthlessness, but that characteristic of the Chinese or Eastern societies that they can be quite, the word is, it's like a very harsh form of equanimity.
Yeah.
Where you detach from your emotions, and they use it a lot for training and gymnastics, ballet. Where does it come from? or I don't know. Once you, because you speak Mandarin,
yeah.
So once you cross the language barrier, which are some of the secrets of the Chinese mind that
they have a very strong sense of a like collective purpose, I would say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they are very like they believe in China, and they are very nationalist. They're very nationalist people, but I would say not in a bad way. They're very proud of their history and their culture, and they can do amazing things because of this collective purpose. They really believe, like I said, they really believe in China. So China can do things on scales that are just wouldn't be possible, I think, outside of China. Like the things like the mega projects and things that they can do and get their people together to do are it's just incredible.
And the Western narrative that happens because the government forces the population, and it's basically a dictatorship, and there is
no, like I said, they believe in China. So like they're proud of their country, they're proud of what their country is can achieve and is achieving, you know.
So the average citizen is not too much in friction with the government or the
no. I didn't see that. Like when I was there, I don't know now because I've not been back to China since 2018. But when I was there, it was a very open capitalist society where a lot of people were making lots of money and very happy with all the freedom that they wanted, really, to kind of just build businesses. And yeah, you know, it was, I think China was I don't, like I said, I don't know now, but when I was there
2018, you said?
Yeah, 2018 was when I was there last.
Super. Things are changing, in fact.
Things changed. I think after COVID, things in China changed a little bit. But when I was there, it was open market and moving forwards. There were some pretty big side effects of the rapid progress, one of them being the pollution. So the pollution in China kind of drove me out. Like it was, once I had a family there and stuff and living in Beijing, the air pollution was bad. Yeah, Beijing was the center of the film industry as well, so I had to be there for auditions. Otherwise, no, I wouldn't choose to live in a city. I'm not a city person, and I love Beijing. Beijing was amazing when I first went there. So when I first went from like 2001, I would say 2001 up to like 2010, that decade. It wasn't too overpopulated. There wasn't a lot of, the pollution wasn't really noticeable. And it was, and Beijing is a beautiful city. A lot of parks, a lot of old buildings and temples. Like the whole center of Beijing around the Forbidden City is like a massive UNESCO protected area, which is all like Kung Fu Panda land. You know, like there's nothing bigger than a 2-story building, I think 2 or 3-story building, and it's all terracotta roofs and bicycles and parks and lakes and everything.
People live there, or it's just...
Yeah, people live there. Yeah, yeah, and it's a huge area. It's many square miles. That's the whole center of the city. Then the more kind of urbanized, like so to the you've got this the center, which is all the traditional area. Then on the east side of the city is the business district. The north is where all the universities are, which is where I lived most of the time, was in the north. Then to the west is all mountains and parks. Like this is Shangshan Park, which is, it's just like mountains, and like you go into this park and you're in the wild, and it's just forests and mountains and so it. But the pollution got bad around, after 2010. So 2010 to 2020, it got bad. And China burns a lot of coal in the winter for heating. And it has a lot of factories and stuff in the north. And I noticed it, like it was just a couple of years where there was a smog over the city, and it got really bad. It got really bad to the point where we had to have air purifiers in the house. We had to tape up all the windows, had to wear masks to go outside. And at this point, I was like, I couldn't see it getting any better. Now, I've heard from friends that live there that it has gotten better, and that China is moved really hard into renewable energy, and that the air is better. But when I was there, it was unbearable. And that kind of pushed me out. Like my family left in 2016, and then I was last there working on a film in 2018, and I haven't been back since then.
Your mind's fantasy when you think of one day, maybe in my 60s, I would do my 5 or 10 years, you said before, that would be China?
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. I miss it. I guess
that's the question. Do you miss it?
Yeah, I miss it, sure. There's just something magical about that culture, the birthplace of Kung Fu, and the movies I grew up watching as a kid. And yeah, there's just something magical about that place. And I've been to Thailand and Malaysia, Singapore. I've been around Asia. I haven't been to Japan. I would like to go to Japan, but I don't know. It's just something about China. It's just ancient, it's just this ancient culture, and the size of it, and the diversity of like the landscapes from deserts to mountains to beaches. Like it has everything, and the food, and the people. I had just a lot of really good, beautiful experiences in that country. So yeah, maybe I'll go back one day.
But the curiosity that originally lived in this boy, how does it express it now?
I would say that I'm deeply involved with my teaching, and my students, and that's my spiritual practice at the moment. It may change, I don't know, but right now that's where I'm getting that fulfillment from. I think we go through periods of being a student, and then periods of maybe being a teacher. Putting those, absorbing, and then giving. It's all part of the process. And yes, it is a cycle. I feel that it is. I might become a student again for a while. I don't know. Let's see.
You grew up here and then you came back here. I think you're the first guest that I have that grew up here.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So how was, now we have been traveling in China, and I was growing up here in the 80s?
Yeah, I came here I came here with my parents in 1985.
Oh,
85. Yeah, I was 4 years old. Yeah. It hasn't changed that much, which
did you enjoy growing up?
oh, it's amazing. Yeah. It's a wonderful place for a kid here. Just riding around on my bike and going to the beach, and just a wonderful outdoor lifestyle with a lot of freedom, a lot of no social, like a lot of kind of cultural or social conformity that I felt like was in the UK, that, you know, you had to wear this designer clothes and watch football or support this team or listen to this kind of music if you wanted to be cool or whatever. No, that here it was, nobody gave a damn about that. And I think it was also the mix of people. So you've got people from everywhere that end up here from many different places in the world. And you know, I went to an international school. The lessons were taught in English, but there were kids from everywhere. And so I think that's important. I think that's important in your childhood. I always shied away from cultural conditioning, even as a child, and I felt that it was this very heavy, suffocating thing. And I think that
maybe that's one of the reasons that you adapted so well in China, because you just like.
Sure, and I think it was also one of the reasons I went to China. I just felt even, yeah, just the influences, like people telling me what I should do and what I should think and what I should like. I was like, nah, I want to have my own space to figure that out. And I think, yeah, going to China when I was 18 was a big part of that, because in China, nobody knew who I was. I was like an alien in that culture, and I didn't have to conform to that culture because I was an outsider, you know? Yeah, it was a real culture shock. When I first landed in China, the first time I went on my gap year, and I was 18, and I landed in Hong Kong, and Hong Kong was fine because Hong Kong, they spoke English. But when I crossed over to the mainland, so I flew into Hong Kong, I think I went straight on the train over to the mainland and stayed my first night in the mainland in Guangzhou. And I was in Guangzhou for a couple of days. And I remember by the second day, I was going through the television to find a channel that was in English. And it was just like Chinese, 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 Chinese. And I eventually found, and it was some mind-numbingly boring game show or something that I would never watch in a million years. And I was glued to it because I was hearing my own language. And no one in the hotel spoke English. No one spoke English. And it got to the point where I couldn't read anything in English. And I got a really bad culture shock, you know. By the second or third day, I just went out of the hotel, and I said to myself, I'm going to walk through this city. Doesn't matter for how many hours or how far I go, until I find someone who speaks English. And I came across this black guy, and he he was doing the same thing. He was trying to find someone who spoke English too. And we saw each other, and I was like, do you speak English? And he's like, yes. He had a bit of an accent, you know. He was, I'm not sure. I can't remember if he was. Yeah, maybe he was there traveling or something, or studying. I don't know. But when we just went straight to a restaurant, had food. We went out. We got drunk together and everything. And it was just like we were the bestest of friends, because it was just someone else who could speak your language. It was bizarre. Yeah. And then
I once met an art student. She was telling me that she did once an experiment that you had a dot in a screen. And you would just move here or move there or move to the other place until you found another dot. The minute you found another dot, all your movements were in relationship to the second dot.
Right.
Because then you had a relationship.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But then you enjoyed growing up here.
Yeah.
To come back later on.
Right. So I was here until I was like 16. Then I went back to UK, studied. Then I was in China when I was 18, and I think the Algarve is great until you become a young adult. Then I think is not enough really going on here. It's better than it used to be. There's a bigger mix of people now in the expat community. Before it was just mostly like retired people and tourists, but now there's a lot of people living here that are from all over the world, interesting people. So it's better now, but still, I think there's some point where you just have to go to a big city, you know, when you're 16 or whatever, you've just got to go to a big city and figure out who you are, uh, and then you'll stay until you have a family or something like that. And I really felt once I had kids, once I had my daughter, that the city was just too much, too busy, too intense. And then I came back here, and so it's that middle stage, being a young adult. I think it's good to get away from here, but then to raise a family, it's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing to be here as a kid, and it's amazing to be here to raise a family. But you've got to be a little bit more established with your career and everything and all of that. And you can kind of do it from here. That's fine. But yeah, the Algarve is a wonderful place. This area, particularly this area of the Algarve, is a magical place. I think the land itself has a certain energy to it. It's very spiritual, yeah. So misconceptions in martial arts from the point of view of an outsider, I would say that there is a big difference between being a fighter and between being a martial artist. So a fighter just wants to, like, you can be a martial artist and a fighter, or you can be just one or the other. Like, a fighter just wants to beat their opponent at any cost. A martial artist is trying to beat themselves. A martial artist might not necessarily fight. There are many martial artists that will just practice like forms, for example. They're trying to perfect the form, and to watch, someone who's put years of practice into forms, it's incredibly beautiful. But that he is just trying to master the form, which is basically master his own body. And so there's a difference. There's a big difference. I think this is a misconception. Like, you can have a martial artist has a certain humility. A fighter can have an ego, and that's not going to impede them. There are many fighters that had big egos and were great fighters. It's not an impediment, but it is an impediment. The ego is an impediment if you're a martial artist. That's going to get in your way, because being a martial artist, it's more of a spiritual practice. It's not so much about fighting. In fact, in the end, it doesn't really have anything to do with fighting. And it's about living by a certain code, like a samurai, like having integrity and honesty, never lying, protecting those that cannot protect themselves, like a knight or something. Fighter doesn't have that. A fighter just, he competes and he wants to win, and he wants the glory of beating his opponent. A martial artist, yeah, for me, that's why I've always gravitated more towards the path of the martial artist and not the path of the fighter. There is a harsh reality when you get into practicing martial arts. Firstly, is that you're never going to learn all the techniques. you're just the human lifespan is just not long enough. There are so many styles and it's not just Asia. Every country, Africa, Russia, South America, they all have some form of fighting style. In every culture, you're never going to learn it all, and that is a harsh lesson to learn. That when you get into it, and of course, at a certain point, you want to master it. You won't. You'll never master it. And the other truth is that there's always going to be someone who's going to beat you. And it might not be because they're better than you. It might be just because in that moment, they've read you, or they've seen a weakness, or there's something, they've put you in a position where they can attack your weakest point. And so you're never going to be winning all the time. And that's why having the mindset of a fighter, you're set up to fail because you can't win every time. And that's the harsh reality. Like this, yeah, you can be really, really good. So it's not about perfection. It's about the path, the journey, and just enjoying it, And anyone who calls themselves a master, I'm sorry, they're not. I would never give myself that name in a million years, because I simply know you cannot master this thing. You cannot. And there's a certain point where you realize that. And you just accept it, and you're like, I'm never going to perfect this thing, but I can enjoy the process, and I can love it, and I can fall in love with it. And I think that's almost the essence of spirituality, is that it's not about the destination, it's the journey.